Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Hello, welcome in. How's it going? Tuesday afternoon, I believe. I'm Jesse Montano. That's Meghan Angley.
Hello.
I was going to say I kidnapped her to come on the show, but then I was like, you know what? Let's not even do the joke. Meghan and I were on the phone. We were talking about Oliver Shillington, whose last name I definitely know how to pronounce. And I just miss talking hockey so much with Meghan. So you were out and about. I told you to stop by if you had a few minutes. And I was lucky enough that you did. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and I know I've shared this with you, but I wanted to volunteer that I made a video on mental health earlier in the year, and I talked about Shillington, and I also said his name wrong in the video. It is my greatest shame because I'm so proud of that video and so ashamed of saying his name wrong exactly the same way you did.
I've seen the video. You should be proud of it. And look, Rudo even just got in on this. In what, and with all due respect to our boy Oliver.
Yeah, you better believe I got it right immediately.
Right.
I learned quickly.
Meghan, I put out like the video equivalent of a redaction today. Like I was like, hey, you know what? My bad. But K and Y make a sh sound?
We talked about this too. I had no idea to look up how to say it correctly because it didn't occur to me I would even say it wrong. I take a lot of pride in pronouncing names of players correctly, especially with respect to players from outside of the United States. But when I looked at that name, I didn't think for a second I was about to say it wrong. So I can completely commiserate with what happened. I'll be more thorough in the future. I'm looking up every name. John Smith, better double check.
Yeah, serious, for real. That was one, because we get a lot of difficult to pronounce names. That one came across my screen and easy.
Yes.
This one's easy. It's pretty straightforward. But I'll tell you this right now. I'll never mispronounce his name again.
No.
I also feel for him because I'm sure he's gotten that a lot in his life.
No, and he doesn't deserve to. You know, I know you've mentioned having your last name incorrectly pronounced. And so out of full respect, we're going to get this right. Shilly, like we're fully on board with Shilly.
Shilly, yes. Yeah, I know him so well, I'm going to nickname him.
Yeah.
I'm so comfortable with how to pronounce his name.
Yeah.
We got this right. Nicknames on it. Yes, Meghan, I was watching your show earlier, and that was what got me to text you, and now you're here. So 2 shows for Meghan. Big day for Meghan fans.
Yeah, if you watch the earlier one, it's going to maybe seem a bit repetitive. It's a sad day in Sam Malinsky Nation. You've heard it all, but like I am in mourning, and I grieve how I feel is appropriate.
Well, and again, like you and I were on the phone, and I got sick of being like, yes. Yeah, Meghan, I agree. I was, you know what? Just come down here. We had some stuff going on in the studio, so that's why this isn't at the regular noon time. But it worked out for me because I got you to stop by and hang out. So let's talk a little bit about Shillington. Let's talk about him as the player and what he brings and why the Avs might be interested. And then I do want to get into the larger conversation. Meghan, I've spent a lot of time and breath this summer saying Sam Malinsky, put him on the roster. He's someone who's going to graduate, and that might be in jeopardy now. But let's talk about Shillington. This is a guy that, as you're going through the internet and doing your research, high upside seems to be the theme. Is this a guy for you that is a buy low, potential high ceiling type of guy?
Absolutely. And it's alongside his trajectory as a defenseman. We've talked about how that is a position that can experience a lot of late bloomers. And with Shillington, he had this breakout season in Calgary alongside Tanev that teased this upside that a lot of people hoped was possible for him. But it was especially seen alongside Tanev. He shed a lot of the mistakes in his game playing alongside somebody who is such a good shutdown two-way D-man.
It's just solid.
Instilled a lot of good habits that allowed Shillington to make fewer mistakes, become a bit more reliable defensively, built up his confidence, which then allowed him to lean into that offensive instinct. And so there is a fast puck-moving defender in Shillington that stylistically fits the way that Colorado likes to play. What I think I like about him that I'm sure what we're about to talk about is how samey he is compared to this crop of defensemen he's kind of competing with. I think he is the edge though, because though not billed as a physically imposing player. He is good size, but he also has terrific speed coupled with it. And actually might have just shy of Malinsky, the best speed among the players. And Malinsky's speed is more untested, I'd say. But Shillington is fast, and he has 200 games NHL under his belt. That experience is going to give him an edge. And because of what he accomplished in that year with Tanev, I think that there is hope that in hearing how Calgary talked about him, it felt all but official he would sign an extension and be a key part of their top four for years to come. I don't know that we're eyeing top four potential for Shillington right now in Colorado, but it is just a year contract, and he'll have a really awesome chance to make a case for himself and decent opportunity to do as much, because I do think of the crop of players, he probably he's projected to be elevated the most among them. I think given that inside track and the most of that opportunity, that experience is going to help him in the eyes of Jared Bednar, who notoriously keeps a short leash.
Yep. 27 years old, just to comment on the size, 6 foot, listed at about 185. So Cale Makar.
I'm surprised to hear 185, because Malinsky's actually probably got more weight on him.
And now keep in mind, a lot of this stuff you can't
it could be, you're right.
The listed heights and weights, but in that range at least. What you said there about the way that he was kind of freed up to be the defenseman that he is by playing next to Tanev, the first thought in my head was when we first saw Sam Girard get next to Josh Manson, and it was just a little bit of that yin and yang almost, where it's like they're so different that they complement each other really well. The thing I worry about, in that respect is Shillington going to get that same type of, partner where, the 1 year where he really shined was playing next to a really solid, smart, makes the right decisions, defensively solid. I mean, we saw Tanev against the Avs, just how, not necessarily suffocating, but like, can you make a mistake? Can you make a mistake?
No, that was the Tanev experience.
Right. And so like, I wonder, okay, if you're on that third pairing next to Calvin DeHaan, I guess where I'm going with this is, do we feel that Shillington needs a player like Tanev, or at least of that, cut of that cloth to be as successful maybe as he can be?
I think so too, especially depending on what their plan is for him. He's had limited but experience on both special teams, and I think where the Avs have a need is on the penalty kill. If that is something that he could work alongside a player like Calvin DeHaan, who is very defensively responsible, probably Josh Manson in the mix too, because I imagine even more a rotation than we're used to seeing because of all of the players that they've added to the D-core. Bednar already likes to mix up the pairs throughout a game. I anticipate that's going to happen. So he might be on the bottom pair with Calvin DeHaan, but I imagine he'll be getting lots of opportunity with a player like Manson. And I guess I'm curious to see too, because he can play on his offside. If he is on that third pair, he is probably on that right side as well. I think he does benefit from it though. It's difficult to evaluate his last year for a couple reasons. He had missed 18 months of hockey, so there was reasonably some rust to be shaken off. And he was primarily in a second pair role with Rasmus Andersson, a very different type of player compared to Tanev. His game, understandably, was not the same as the breakout year with Tanev. I'm not going to pin that on Andersson, specifically as his D partner being the reason why. I think the state of the Calgary Flames was also a factor in this, and his prolonged absence, to where I'm actually not sure it's even a requirement to have a player like Tanev alongside him, because there's not enough evidence yet
to say that he needs
I think somebody of a similar build is helpful because it helps his confidence. Even though he's 27, it does still feel like such a young player that we're talking about. That's how I view him. It's very much untested. And because of that, I could see him getting opportunity with maybe some more unlikely candidates too. Like, how does he look alongside Sam Girard? And does he play with Brandstrom at some point? And I think that he could still find ways to be effective even alongside that type of player.
No, I agree. And what you said about him being untested, because that's the part that and we always joke, Google safely. But if you're just looking at his breakdown by the numbers, right? Has not played a full season in the NHL. Played 73 games in the breakout year where he put up 9 goals, 31 points, was solid in the playoffs. But other than that, again, from a production standpoint, and that is a third of the story with a defenseman like this. But I'm more of looking at the games played, and that's kind of where my head goes immediately of how available is this guy going to be? You know, when we were on the phone, we were just talking about, Calvin DeHaan always seems to be injured. I wonder how much of something like this is, well, now we've got a couple guys that we like in the bottom of that D group, but we're planning for injuries. We're planning that we're going to need to be shuffling things around. And what you said of Jared Bednar has 6 defensemen more than he has 3 pairings. I'm starting to wonder, with everything we're talking about with Shillington, is this going to be kind of one piece to a different type of looking decor where, it's going to be Shillington might get some reps with Devon Taves. He might get some reps with Calvin DeHaan. I don't know. It's just, it's kind of puzzling to me.
And it might not get so topsy-turvy, but I think the second and third pair are going to be quite a mix. And it's for a couple of reasons. I think they're each insurance for the other because there's also a risk being taken in Brandstrom. And then with Calvin DeHaan, it's his availability. Is he going to be healthy throughout the season? That question kind of exists for Josh Manson as well, though he had a really complete season last year. There were injury concerns for him as well before it. I do view this as the Avs addressing this part of their lineup that Game 4, when Devon Taves was not feeling well and Caleb Jones drew in the Dallas series, it was a disaster. And I don't blame Caleb Jones for that.
Nope.
I think they took a look at that, though, and Caleb Jones was a solid option at the bottom of the decor to come in. But they needed better. I think that's where they decided not to gamble with what the plan B was going to look like anymore and have several really good options. It creates a bit of a challenge then in getting guys minutes night after night because that was also Caleb Jones' problem. And so they're going to have to find some space, at least for 3 of these players that we're talking about at times. Calvin DeHaan will probably solve itself, but I do imagine with Manson and Girard, with one more year past this year in their contracts left, they are also auditioning players for what that next step looks like because they will have to solve their second pairing in the near future. And it doesn't mean it won't be Girard, he's extended, but maybe there is a cost-effective option that exists in a player like Shillington down the line.
Well, and part of what I thought was just again, a little puzzling about the Shillington move was everything you're just saying about, auditioning potentially guys for the future. When they signed Brandstrom, I was like, all right, well, I love that pickup. It's a guy who can be effective now, but he's 24 years old. You're looking down the line as well. Can we integrate this guy? Can we get him rolled in? I thought that made sense. And that to me was a pickup where it's like, okay, you're creating competition. You're giving yourself a little bit of depth. This now, I'm trying to decide on what this move even is. Is this an indictment on Sam Malinsky? Is this Jared Bednar saying we needed more out of our decor? We couldn't go to Caleb Jones last year, but we needed more options. I'm just starting to wonder. I'm not starting to wonder. I think there's a lot of positives about Shillington, but it's just very crowded suddenly. You've got, I think it's safe to say Calvin DeHaan will be on the roster. You got 3 guys that I think all have a pretty strong case for one spot. And I'm just wondering, like you said, they had a hard time finding minutes for Caleb Jones. Do you want to have a hard time finding minutes for these guys again?
Especially with Malinsky being someone that can just play in Loveland and is maybe, I don't even want to speak it into existence that he would pass through waivers. Is he waiver exempt still for one more year? I don't think he is. I think he's waiver eligible this year as well. So all these players a little bit of a gamble in that sense. It does feel like, to your earlier point about the Avs adopting a different look for their decor, I think that was true the moment they moved on from Jack Johnson because they historically targeted a player like that for the bottom pair. It's not so different from what they've done with Calvin DeHaan, but bringing into the fold Brandstrom and now Shillington and having Malinsky there, maybe it will look different. Maybe we've got it all wrong. Maybe Calvin DeHaan isn't the solidified third pair option. It would be an entirely different look on the third pair, to be fair, and I'm not sure how I'd feel about it. It'd be kind of smaller puck-moving guys making up that third pair. That is a little bit different. It doesn't feel like something they'd be comfortable with, but I'm beginning to entertain the fact that they are looking at something very new.
Well, and not only would your third pairing be smaller puck-moving guys, 5 of your 6 defensemen in the lineup on any given night would be, and look, like, I'm not anti-smaller puck-moving guy. I think Cale Makar is one of the best defensive defensemen in the league as well. I think Sam Girard is wildly underrated for how solid he is in his own end and his gap work and how well he uses his stick. But that's a lot of same. And to your point, not having a guy like not having that third pairing that can just kind of anchor things down. I don't know. It almost, the more we're sitting here talking through, it almost feels to me like, well, they have to be doing stuff differently.
They do. I almost wondered too if Josh Manson plays more a third pair role, but the third pair is just trusted with more minutes than we've seen before, and it's actually more well distributed throughout each pairing. And maybe that second pair is the one that's actually kind of getting the makeover and being also kind of 2 puck-moving guys. So it's this 1-2 punch like Makar Taves, and then this other offensive punch in whatever that second pair looks like. And maybe because Shillington, he's a bigger guy, maybe they're willing to grant him some allowances. Like, well, it is still a little bit different from what Brandstrom brings. And Malinsky's actually really solid.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's developed the confidence in his game to play a physically imposing style. So I'm not sure how realistically I'm entertaining Malinsky in that conversation, but I think there's more to give on that side of the puck as well.
And I've asked around on this, and I haven't really heard anything. There's no way this is not. I shouldn't say there's no way. Do you get any sense that this is setting up a trade?
I really don't, and it's not that I'd be surprised if one came of it. It just doesn't immediately point to that in my eyes. All of these do seem like the Avs addressing having guys go down, guys like Devon Taves, and not having a really good option in his place. And I think they just wanted to avoid that problem in the future. And they looked at the bottom of the forward group, and I think they saw we can get away with a little bit more here. I don't know if these playoffs help to reveal some of that. Like, they might have just come to terms with the fact that they won't have the third and fourth line depth the way that they did in the 2022 season, that fourth line can be a little bit more in flux. We're going to really focus on the defensive group moving forward.
Well, I mean, the year the Avs won the Cup 2 years ago, we were doing our show together, and I think one of the things you and I talked the most about was people don't quite understand everything this team does is driven through the D. Like, it's all driven through their defense, and the offense comes from the D core. Breakouts go through the defense. Cale Makar can kind of do whatever he wants, but like everything that the Avs try to do, or at least a couple years ago, was started with the defense. I almost look at this as like, okay, well, are they trying to, like you said, we've got 8 defensemen that we think are solid NHL level defensemen. We're not going to get caught in a situation where we don't have a strong pairing on the ice, and we're just going to give ourselves as many options as possible. Because if you're moving a defenseman, if you're doing all this and moving a defenseman, it's probably Josh Manson. And that doesn't make any sense to me.
Not with how it's currently constructed. Right. And, we'd heard that the Avs, at least earlier this summer, were not interested in moving Manson. Yes. Things changed, so I won't suggest it's not a possibility anymore, but I do think that's interesting. And I lost my train of thought, but it had something.
About moving Josh Manson, the Avs didn't want to earlier this season. It wouldn't make sense.
I remember what it is now. Perfect. Have we overvalued what a Jack Johnson on the third pair is? Or am I not appreciating it enough? I've maybe been a little bit of a Jack Johnson hater, but I reflect on what that third pair has been now for the last couple of seasons. And I know from a coaching standpoint, it's really valued for what it brings. But as a viewer, I felt like players like Caleb Jones, Sam Malinsky in that position have not benefited from playing alongside Jack Johnson. And maybe I'm being too critical of him. It's one of those, you don't know what you have until it's gone.
Right.
Maybe I would see not having him on the ice. Oh, I see this is really detrimental to the entirety of how they execute defensively.
Right.
Or is it something that they can retool and have look a little bit different?
How old's Calvin DeHaan? Only 33. Because when you said that earlier about, well, maybe we're giving too much respect to, Calvin DeHaan's roster security. So yeah, I don't know. Is this a You said a couple things in the last 2 minutes that really made me think. One was the Calvin DeHaan thing, and then the other was did we overvalue what that third pairing was? I don't know. Is this just going to be kind of like we're going to rotate these pairings until something sticks?
Isn't that already how he executes? The blender, the D pairs are constantly mixed up throughout the night. Maybe he's just like, I want options.
But I guess the waivers thing, and let's take this.
You're right, because who's not playing hockey?
Right.
You're not sitting 26-year-old Sam Malinsky, who's still very young and should be playing hockey.
And the thing that I think about with Sam Malinsky is that was a free agent. That was a college free agent who chose to come here. I'm not saying that automatically means he gets roster spot, but I think
it didn't for Ben Myers.
Right. But I think Sam Malinsky was way better than Ben Myers was with in the American Hockey League.
He produced
right
at the NHL level almost immediately. And I know that it's not necessarily sustainable. Like the clip that he produced at for Malinsky, that is translatable to anything comparing to Brandstrom or to Shillington. They've had far more NHL games under their belt for those numbers to kind of lay out. But man, it's hard to deny Malinsky that.
Well, and Meghan, we used to all get into arguments on the show because I'm in the camp of if you get called up, it is incumbent on the player to earn every minute of ice. Nobody owes you anything. The coaching staff doesn't have to put you in a top 6 role. It's up to you to go out and earn every bit. For the first time in my life, I said I didn't think Ivan Prosvetov got a fair shake. I thought he played well. I thought he had one bad game and they never gave him another look. And this would be an instance where if we don't see Malinsky or if he gets waived or, something like that, this would be another instance where I would say what he did on the ice did not match the results that he got in terms of roster placement, opportunities, things like that. I thought not only did he jump in and contribute, I thought for him being a young player, first time playing in the NHL, I did not think he looked out of place. He seemed confident. He seemed comfortable with the puck on his stick. I thought he made, for the most part, there were mistakes, of course. I thought he made good decisions. And he produced. Like you said, I'm not saying that he's going to produce at that same clip if he's a full-time NHLer, but I thought that was an instance of someone who came in, you stuck him on a third pair, he did everything you asked and more. And I was even to the point where I was advocating it should be Sam Malinsky on the third pairing going into the playoffs. I thought he was that solid. And now seeing the depth chart being stacked seemingly in front of him. Now, look, I'm also in the camp of you do whatever you think makes your roster the best.
Right.
And if you think Brandstrom and Shillington give you a better chance than Sam Malinsky, then who am I to say that Chris McFarland and Joe Sakic don't know what they're doing? But this is just one to me where it feels like you have too many options suddenly.
And I think this is where, in being Sam Malinsky's fan, I'm actually doing a disservice in casting this kind of doubt on him to beat out the competition. Like, if I really believe in Sam Malinsky, I shouldn't be so worried about Brandstrom ahead of him, Shillington ahead of him. He should be able to beat down that door. I think what's tough, unrelated to that is hard for him to overcome, is he can never just gain the experience edge that those two players have overnight. And I think that's what holds him back with getting that opportunity in Bednar's eyes. So I don't know that there's even much he can do as a player to overcome that. And I hope I'm wrong.
Well, and the other part of that too, that again, it's the unfortunate business side of this, but these are both players who are making more money than him. In Eric Brandstrom's case, he's younger than him. and like you said, they've got more. So there just feels like there's stuff that's, the cards are stacked a little bit against him. Now, I should also point out that if you put any kind of value into this, Elite Prospects had Shillington listed as a Calgary Wranglers player for this upcoming season, especially with the games that he's missed over the last couple of years. He recently played in the American Hockey League. So, I don't think by any stretch of the imagination am I going to say it's a guarantee that Brandstrom and Shillington make the team ahead of Sam Malinsky. When I saw the Brandstrom signing, my thought was, nice. They're going to make Sam Malinsky earn this.
Right.
They're not just handing it out because he had a good year last year. He's got to earn this spot. And now I'm sitting there saying, well, shit, now he's got to climb over 2, if not 3 people to get a spot.
When Chris McFarland used the language of like bust the door down, I think it was, that's what comes to mind now. He's really got to do something explosive.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're looking at him, Cal Ritchie, and I think Jean-Luc Foudy is my dark horse, as those are the 3 guys that I'm looking at this year to break the door down.
And it's do or die. I hate to put that kind of pressure, but for Foudy,
it is. Yep.
Just based on the time spent now in the American League, and I get that he joined very young, but it's time now. It needs to happen now, and I still think there's NHL upside in that player.
Yep.
The fit doesn't make a ton of sense in Colorado, so everybody, including Foudy himself, needs to get serious about what that looks like. And can he find a home? And
he's the exact type of player that, what I was saying a minute ago, like you over the years have sold me on Foudy. I'm a Foudy guy. Foudy, not Ffoody. Maybe I do need help with spelling. Jeez. Foudy is the type of guy that, like I was talking about a minute ago, I want to see him get minutes, and I want to see him be a chameleon, play a different role. He's a small guy, but be heavy below the goal line, get to the front of the net. I know he's not afraid to do stuff like that. So he's the type of guy that I don't think is going to get a top 6 shot right away, but I want to see him take whatever opportunity the Avs give him and just run with it in the way that I felt Sam Malinsky did.
If he knew what was good for him, he would look at what Logan O'Connor does and how Logan O'Connor carved out a role for himself, because what exists for Foudy right now is a depth role. Mm-hmm. His skill, upside, pedigree probably projected him more for a second line role. That's not where he's at right now. Yep. He does need to be like a chameleon and adopt a really different part of his game, and he's been working on it to his credit, but he's going to have to really key in on that, and he should look to everything that LOC does. Well,
and what were you and I talking about earlier, off air about that 4th line? Nothing against Parker Kelly, but to me, that's a potentially vulnerable spot that Jean-Luc Foudy with his play could grab. He could play a 4th line center role right next to Logan O'Connor.
I like him for it. And Olauson's right there too. Mm-hmm. They're kind of equal in my eyes in terms of the opportunity that exists for them.
See, I'm down on Olauson.
I'm down on both of them a little bit.
Ooh, okay.
And with Foudy, it's because he didn't demonstrate to me in this last year where that fit makes the most sense, and he didn't get a lot of opportunity to. I'm not going to be hard on him in that sense, but he still needs to play a different type of game to be an NHL regular with the Avs right now. I like his game so much. It's unique. It's kind of hard to describe. Yeah. It shouldn't be hard to describe this year. I want to know exactly what Foudy is. That's what's holding him back. What's holding Oscar back is his willingness to be the power forward that physically he's built to be. Right. It's just not 100% there yet.
Well, and he needs to look at someone like Mikko.
He should look at Mikko on a good night, not when Mikko's being a little bit silly.
Well, but so here's my thing with Mikko Rantanen. Find me a player who finds a way to be effective more regular than more regularly than Mikko Rantanen. Mikko Rantanen has bad games. He goes through bad stretches. That dude finds a way to be effective and productive seemingly every night. Even if you don't like the process, Mikko Rantanen finds a way to get involved. And I feel like that's something where Olausen's like, you're big, but you don't play big. You need to look at Mikko Rantanen in the way that he shoehorns himself into every game. And that's what Olausen needs to do.
He does, because like to your point, it's not the most physically imposing thing, but the way that he finds opportunities, he's got a lot in his arsenal. Where Oscar has that shot. He has to have a little bit more, and he can. He's not an unintelligent player. It just feels like he's not fully applying himself sometimes. And he also missed a lot of the season last year, so I don't want to come down too hard on him. It was a really significant year to showcase his improvement, and he missed it because of the shoulder injury, so I won't be too hard. Right.
I'm anxious to see what he does at camp. I do want to briefly touch on Foodie, just what you were saying about his kind of unique playing style. I do feel like he is unique in that he's a small player. He almost personality-wise, very different. Almost kind of reminds me of Connor Garland.
That's interesting.
Like in the fact that he's just like Jean-Luc Foodie strikes me as someone who's like fearless.
There is a little bit of chaos.
Yes.
He's slippery, especially because he is so nimble of foot. It's such a strength of his skating, and it's like sometimes it's unbridled, and that's where there's a little bit of discipline issue at the NHL level. I think he can rein that in. It was his first NHL game.
I'm with you.
I'm not too worried about that specifically.
And I'm saying that in that's me giving a vote of confidence of I think he could do it.
I agree.
I think he could find a way to weasel himself into a bottom six role.
Weasel is the right word.
You might be, all jokes aside, you might be right. And then from there, work your way up the lineup. I think there are so many players, not just with the Avs, but in the NHL that could look at Logan O'Connor. Tyson Jost. If you could find a way to do what Logan O'Connor does.
Yeah.
And you know what I was the most sad about with Logan O'Connor last year?
Which part?
That felt like it was an offensive breakout year.
It absolutely was. The numbers were trending in the best ever, and it felt sustainable. It didn't feel like a flash in the pan.
Right.
I'm so excited for then what's to come in this next year. I hate that it was interrupted.
I know.
Because he kind of would plateau each year around the same point place, and it would always be like 1 point more. It felt like he was kind of break through that plateau this last year.
And the way that he was chipping in, whether it be assists or goals, they were different.
Shorthanded.
Right. Yeah.
That was insane.
But it like you said, it felt sustainable. Okay, I think we can kind of move on from that depth conversation. The last thing I want to get your thoughts on, and I know you guys talked about it on your show, and I've been arguing with people all day. The KHL is rolling out in a this is when they're first rolling it out, and it appears that they're doing the same thing the NHL did when the NHL rolled out the shootout, where after preseason games they're playing out overtime to showcase the new rules. And the new rule is it's 3-on-3. Once the attacking team crosses over the red line, they cannot go back. We've heard this talked about for years. I've always kind of been, I don't know. I don't like the idea of shortening the ice so much, but maybe, Meghan, I saw it in practice in one video. I saw it being played out in one video, and I immediately said, nope, don't want this. No, thank you. And for me, it was because in the video, the defense, yes, the offensive player curled out of the zone to reset, and the defense immediately just like really pushed him back towards the red line. The player kind of got his like back up against the red line, tried to stick handle out of it, and they blew it dead, saying that in the stick handling, he took it over the red line. Play blown dead. The KHL rule is going to be your team gets one warning. After that, it's a penalty. I couldn't dislike that more now seeing it play out. Do you have any thoughts on this, or am I just being dramatic?
No, I hate that it's a penalty after the second infraction.
Yep.
I think that's terrible. I think it's already evidence to be interruptive to the game, which disrupts the flow of overtime, which was the point of changing it, was to make it more entertaining. And I think more entertaining means better flow.
Yes.
And I understand the criticism of what 3v3 has become in overtime, but I don't think this makes it better. I think it makes it worse. We talked before we went on air, like if you're really craving some kind of change to up the ante. That's what it feels like they're trying to do, is just turn up the heat a little bit on overtime. I still don't like this method because I think it leads to impulsive, mistake-laden hockey, and that's not very fun to watch.
Right.
I love the smart side of hockey where plays unfold and players work to set them up, and it takes a little bit of patience for it to unfold. And so I think if they're going to retool it at all, I'm still not really in favor of it. We talked about the reverse offsides, or just a second offsides, where if a player draws back by the red line, the attacking players just also have to draw back. So you're still allowed the ability to reset, and the penalty of which could be a whistle. I don't think it should be anything more than that. This still doesn't address the disruption, though. You're still stopping hockey at some point when players don't draw back in time. And so I don't love that. I'm not sure this needed to be fixed. Maybe I'm, the old man who yells at clouds now, but I didn't think it needed to be fixed.
No, I'm with you. That's my thing with it. Like, this feels like a solution we didn't need. There's two things in particular that I really don't like it. And one of them is the uptick in whistles. The NHL is working very, very, very hard to shorten these games. And it's not as easy as it is in the MLB, where they put in a pitch clock and that eliminated 90 minutes from your game. The NHL is trying to find a way to make this stuff shorter. The NHL has outright said, we don't want fans watching the games for 3 hours. We don't want that. We want less than 3 hours. Adding something like this that will only add more whistles. It'll only add more whistles. And then, Meghan, the part that I don't like about it, so 4-on-3 power plays in overtime are like as close to automatic as you can get in terms of attacking teams, having grade A opportunities. So you're really having an impact on the game if you're putting teams on 4-on-3 power plays. How long, Meghan, until a whistle is blown saying, oh, it's the second time you went over, delay a game, and the entire bench stands up saying, that puck didn't go over. It didn't go over. It didn't cross the red line. And now you're in a review process to see if the puck crossed the red line. And if it did, and did it go all the way over? Does it have to go all the way over? Does it have to cross over? Again, like I look at that thing from today, the player's skates are planted on the attacking side of the red line. He's forced, because of the defense, to stick handle backwards and cross over. There's too much gray area. You're adding room for more controversy. Because imagine if you are vying for a playoff spot in the regular season and you get called for a penalty on this that you feel and replay show it was at worst close. They don't know if it fully went over. You go down on a 4-on-3, you get scored on, your season's over. Like, who's going to say that was a good rule or benefited anybody other than the team that got a 4-on-3 power play? I think you said it best. I didn't think this needed to be fixed.
Now, in hearing you talk about the power play too, it changes the way a team would approach a power play, because they often do draw back and reset as part of the power play strategy. Like, it just, not that power plays need to be that involved with overtime anyways, but it just changes the way that players would ordinarily play hockey in a big way. And I get 3v3 did too at one point, but this just feels like the constant pressure of a penalty kill for both teams at any given moment without the benefit of one being on the man advantage. Like, it's just that panic of being on the kill.
Right. And think of it also this way, because I hadn't thought about this. So you said it. So if you're on the power play and a puck bobbles over your stick a little bit, now you go out into the neutral zone. You've only got, 20 feet or 30 feet or something like that to work with. And people are like, well, just dump it back in. It's like, so now we're back to encouraging dump and chase at 3-on-3. We want to see guys dumping and chasing.
No.
And then the other part that I don't like, that has never been a part of the game of hockey, is conceding possession. Here, we don't have anywhere to go. We're on the power play. Take it. I hate that.
No, it's straying from the set plays, right? The tic-tac-toe plays. And inviting a very different, ugly brand of hockey that exists throughout the course of any game. It's part of hockey too, but it should not be what we highlight.
I agree with you. And I know, like, there were a lot of people that were saying, like, oh, I don't like the possession side of, what 3-on-3 has become. and this is maybe where I just differ in opinion. I think you maybe feel the same way of like, I like the chess match. It's a little bit slower. It's a little bit boring, but at 3-on-3, I like it because you can see what plays they're trying to set up, and they draw back and they're trying to pull players deep and get someone to go. Like I think it's fun. I like the tactfulness that 3-on-3 has become.
And when they're so dog tired because they just played 3 periods of hockey, they're probably going to be so mad that they can't draw back and reset a little bit, catch their breath. Well,
and teams have also now gotten to the point where they use, like the teams shorten up the ice themselves because they don't want to give, if you have possession, we don't want to go too far back because that's going to give you an opportunity to change. We want to keep possession. We want to keep your tired players on the ice. So we're going to shorten up the ice naturally. Yeah. That's part of the progression of strategy that we've seen of we're not going to retreat beyond our own blue line because that means you guys can get a change.
Yeah.
So I think you also, maybe it was you who suggested it earlier, make it the far blue line. I'd be more open to that. If you had the entire neutral zone to work with, but you can't regroup all the way behind your net. All right.
I like it, and still don't make it a penalty on the second infraction.
Yes. Yep. I like that better. Couple comments here. Punishing teams for wanting to reload when they have puck possession will only slow the game down and lead to less odd man rushes. I agree. Part of the fun of 3-on-3 is one mistake and it goes the other way. Now it's dump it, everyone get back. It's
yeah.
And keep in mind, the rule is once you advance past the red line. What I don't think people are accounting for, what this is going to turn into is, okay, well, we need to hold it and set up as much as we can before we get over the red line and try to find those breaks. So I think, I just don't think this is going to have the result that people want it to. And then, of course, vaguely sober with the super chat. Yeah. Always. I feel so bad for Sam Malinsky. You know what? I'm going to follow your lead, Megan. I'm not going to feel bad for him. If I believe that I think he should have had a look this year, I'm going to stick with it. I think he earns the spot.
Yeah, I don't feel bad for Sam Malinsky.
I don't feel bad for him yet because I think he's going to earn it, and I think we're going to be feeling bad for Oliver Shillington.
We won't be feeling bad for Shillington.
No,
he's fine too. No. Everyone's going to get a spot somehow.
The Avs are going to skate 8D and 10 forwards every night.
Yeah, Malinsky's going to moonlight as a forward, and that's actually the fourth line solution we didn't see coming.
Yeah. Here is one real quickly just before we go out, suggesting that changing the way that points are allocated would maybe be better about solving the solution in overtime more so than a rule like
I'm
this.
not ready to say it with my full chest, but I agree.
Yeah. I can never decide how I feel about the loser point. I've contemplated how I feel about the loser point for 2 decades.
Me too. It makes me feel good as the viewer, but I don't know.
It's where you lose me is when you see teams like Anaheim did it a few years ago, 2 seasons ago, Dallas did it. These teams who are 10 wins behind, a team at the top of the division, but they're right there because they have 17 overtime losses. Those are the instances where I start I don't know. But hockey's a hard sport, and to get to overtime is an accomplishment.
It is. That's where the part of me as a person's yeah, they deserve a reward. They deserve a little treat.
Have that. Yeah. Think of the overtime point as a little treat. You worked really hard, you get a little treat for getting to overtime. Megan, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
She's Meghan Angley of DNVR. My name's Jesse Montano. I think we got John back there running the board still. I'm not sure, but he was. So big shout out to John. Thanks so much, guys. Have a good one, and we will see you Friday. Bye, everybody.